On a vast plateau cradled in the heart of the Rocky Mountain Range lies 2 million acres of unspoiled wilderness, never farmed and never fenced. Canyons, lakes, rivers, and mountains. A refuge for magnificent animals and a spiritual sanctuary for generations of Americans. All resting on the largest supervolcano in North America. This is Yellowstone, America's first national park. Yellowstone National Park. 3,500 square miles of pristine wilderness. Yellowstone is a haven for the largest concentration of wildlife in the continental United States, and over 1,300 plant species. From the gray wolf to the long-eared bat, and geysers to hot springs, Yellowstone is one of the largest remaining ecosystems in North America. But these sweeping grasslands and forests are more than just a nature reserve. Yellowstone represents an idea as uniquely American as the Declaration of Independence. When established, Yellowstone was a new symbol of democracy. Land the federal government protected from development, sale, and occupation. Land that belonged to all the people. Land preserved as wilderness for future generations. Native Americans first visited Yellowstone 12,000 years ago. They named this region after the unique yellow rocks seen in the cliffs of Yellowstone's Grand Canyon. In 1809, one of Lewis and Clark's explorers, John Coulter, discovered the lands that would later become Yellowstone National Park. Many other European explorers followed, venturing into the wilderness. They returned with tall tales of a land where waterfalls spouted upwards, mud boiled, and steam came out of the ground. Back in the cities, it sounded too fantastic to be believed. In 1869, a group of prospectors wrote an account of their journey into the area, but editors in the East refused to publish what they deemed to be a work of fiction. Eventually, the head of the U.S. Geological Survey of Territories decided it was time for professional explorers to take a look. In 1871, Ferdinand Hayden led a team of 50 scientists and surveyors into Yellowstone. To prove their findings, they were accompanied by artists and photographers. Finally, Americans were able to see the majesty of the landscape. Hayden and his team prepared a report, complete with photos and paintings, outlining how the Yellowstone region was unsuitable for farming, ranching, or mining. Hayden also warned of the dire consequences if the area was not protected from private development. Recognizing Yellowstone was a priceless treasure, Hayden returned to the east and passionately lobbied senators, congressmen, and his superiors in the Department of the Interior to help him preserve Yellowstone. Hayden became the park's first and most enthusiastic advocate. He feared Yellowstone would become a commercial attraction, where every scenic view belonged to private landowners. Already, there were plans to sell off land around Yellowstone's prime attractions to entrepreneurs looking to exploit visitors by charging a fee to see the sights. Hayden believed in setting aside the area as a pleasure ground for the benefit and enjoyment of the people, and that it should be as free as the air or water. Eventually, Hayden and his supporters convinced Congress that Yellowstone needed to be preserved in its natural state as a public park. On March 1st, 1872, President Ulysses S. Grant signed the bill creating Yellowstone Park, the first national park in the history of the world. The magnificent natural wonders of the land were now available to everyone. It seems like a simple idea today, but 140 years ago, it was a groundbreaking thought. Today, visitors entering Yellowstone from the north pass through the 50-foot-tall Roosevelt Arch. Written across the top are the words, "For the benefit and enjoyment of the people." Most visitors assume the quotation is from the man who gave the arch its name, President Theodore Roosevelt. But while Yellowstone held a special place in Roosevelt's heart, he was only 13 when the park was formed. The quotation actually comes from the act that established Yellowstone National Park in 1872. In 1903, Roosevelt interrupted a national speaking tour to spend 2 weeks camping in his beloved Yellowstone National Park. He was said to be reluctant to change out of his camping clothes and into a suit so he could lay the cornerstone of the arch that still bears his name. In the first year it opened, Yellowstone National Park drew only 300 intrepid visitors who endured days of arduous travel by stagecoach along dusty trails. Once inside the park, there were no roads because Congress provided no money to build them. In the early years of Yellowstone, there was considerable opposition to the concept of the national park system. So the only way to create Yellowstone was to ensure it cost the taxpayer nothing. It was a park without protection. The earliest visitors were able to chip off pieces of geyser formations to take home as souvenirs. Others went in search of big game. The Great Plains of North America were once the feeding grounds of up to 60 million bison. The Yellowstone region was a sanctuary for the mighty herds, but poachers ignored the boundaries of the national park. It was time to call in the cavalry.
This month on 3Net, see the world in 3D as only IMAX can show you. Galapagos brings you closer than ever before to the place where land's oldest reptiles meet the mammals of the marine and one of the last pristine places on Earth. L5 launches you into the future, to a city in outer space where humans will live in and travel throughout our very own solar system. NASCAR puts you in the driver's seat for the heart-pounding 3D thrills of America's most popular spectator sport. And T-Rex takes you back 65 million years for a prehistoric adventure that brings you face to face with the fiercest of the dinosaurs. This month, only on 3Net.
The bison herds of America were once the greatest concentration of a single mammal species ever to exist on Earth. But then, the railroads arrived. Trains brought men with guns, and in just 10 years, the bison herds were decimated. By the time Yellowstone National Park was established in 1872, only about 400 bison lived within its boundaries. Even these animals found no sanctuary, because without funds, there was no way of preventing people from hunting in the park. Poachers picked off the survivors one by one, until only 20 bison remained in Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone explorer Nathaniel Langford had been appointed as superintendent to protect the park from vandalism and poaching. But he was unpaid, had no staff, and 2 million acres of wilderness to protect. He could do little to stop the slaughter of wildlife. When the U.S. Army sent another expedition into Yellowstone in 1875, the naturalists on the team were appalled by the lawlessness and exploitation of the park's resources. General Philip Sheridan, a hero of the Civil War, was commander of the U.S. Army for much of the West, and the protection of Yellowstone was his personal crusade. Sheridan ordered the 1st U.S. Cavalry into the park to prevent the destruction of natural formations and wildlife. The soldiers were supposed to be a temporary solution to the problems of lawlessness in the park. But the cavalry stayed, defending Yellowstone for 30 years. And their temporary Camp Sheridan was replaced with the permanent structures of Fort Yellowstone. The soldiers were a useful deterrent to destructive behavior, but there was still no law prohibiting hunting in national parks. So if the cavalry caught poachers and vandals, the wrongdoers were only issued warnings and, in severe cases, expelled from the park. 22 years after the park was created, President Grover Cleveland signed a law that would finally protect Yellowstone, its geysers, and its wildlife. But soon, the cavalry faced new challenges. In 1902, it was illegal to drive an automobile in Yellowstone National Park. So when one reckless driver roared past a squadron of mounted cavalry, the car sent their horses into a frenzy, and the outraged soldiers took off in pursuit. Eventually, they caught up with the vehicle as it struggled up a hill. The soldiers lassoed the car, tied the vehicle's wheels, and detained the driver. His punishment was to give the curious park administrator a ride in his newfangled automobile. Today, cars and bison happily coexist in Yellowstone. Back from the brink of extinction, more than 4,500 bison roam free in the national park. The animals are the only genetically pure descendants of the great bison herds that once roamed the prairie. But even here in Yellowstone, bison are not totally safe. In 2004, 4 bison were found dead without a wound on their body. Their deaths were a mystery, until scientists realized geothermal vents in the hills above had poured out deadly gases, including hydrogen sulfide. It was a cold night, and the heavier-than-air gases rolled down to collect in the basin, where the bison were grazing. The animals were asphyxiated, falling to the ground at the hands of a silent killer. But that's just one of the risks for those who live in a national park that sits on top of this enormous geological hotspot.
This month on 3Net, see the world in 3D as only IMAX can show you. Galapagos brings you closer than ever before to the place where land's oldest reptiles meet the mammals of the marine in one of the last pristine places on Earth. L5 launches you into the future, to a city in outer space where humans will live in and travel throughout our very own solar system. NASCAR puts you in the driver's seat for the heart-pounding 3D thrills of America's most popular spectator sport. And T-Rex takes you back 65 million years for a prehistoric adventure that brings you face to face with the fiercest of the dinosaurs. This month, only on 3Net.
Yellowstone National Park sits on top of a column of partly melted rock that descends more than 1,800 miles, nearly halfway to the center of the Earth. This geological hotspot is the heat source that fuels the park's 10,000 hot springs, mud pools, and fumaroles. That's half of all the geothermal features in the world. But the national park is most famous for its geysers. There are more than 300 geysers in Yellowstone. That's over 60% of all the geysers found on the planet. Old Faithful is the most famous because it puts on a show every 90 minutes. This clock-like regularity is how it got its name back in 1870. But tourists have always been impatient. In 1885, a Chinese laundryman accidentally discovered that adding soap to a hot spring induces an eruption, and in the process blows a laundry basket sky high. Soon, tourists, disappointed at missing Old Faithful, created eruptions on demand by tipping soap into geysers all over the park. The U.S. Army joined in the fun when General Sheridan's men put their dirty clothes in the crater between eruptions. Adding soap to geysers made for good entertainment. But it was bad for Yellowstone's geothermal features. Beneath a geyser is a deep cavern with a narrow opening. It's filled with water that's superheated by the molten rock simmering just below Yellowstone. In the period between eruptions, Old Faithful slowly fills, and the water at the top of the geyser cools down, pressing on the hotter water beneath, like the lid on a pressure cooker. Adding soap lowers the pressure, lifting the lid enough to cause an eruption. Unfortunately, soap also does terrible things to Old Faithful. It damages the intricate plumbing of the geyser, so the gimmick was quickly outlawed. Old Faithful is still the world's most famous geyser. It may not be the tallest geyser in Yellowstone, or the hottest, but it does erupt about 20 times every day, every year. The word geyser comes from the Icelandic word meaning to gush. And gush is what Old Faithful does best. In an eruption lasting just 4 minutes, 8,500 gallons of superheated water are fired higher than a 10-story building. Other geysers are less predictable. Steamboat Geyser is the biggest in the world when it blows, shooting an astonishing 1 million gallons of water. That's enough to fill 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools 400 feet into the air. But it's far from faithful, erupting at intervals ranging from 4 days to 50 years. Eruptions carry more than just water and steam high into the air. As it passes up through the rocks, the superheated water dissolves silica from bedrock. Old Faithful spouts 65 pounds of dissolved silica with each and every eruption. It's estimated that every day, all the geysers in the park erupt 390 tons of minerals. That's about the weight of a Boeing 747. When the water cools, some of the silica collects around the geysers as a gray cone, growing at about an inch every century. At that rate, the 12-foot tall cone of silica around Castle Geyser has been growing for 15,000 years, since the time of the last ice age. At Yellowstone's Mammoth Hot Springs, hot water flows through limestone, not lava. As a result, the superheated water dissolves vast quantities of calcium carbonate. As it spills down the hillside, it cools, coating everything in a layer of bright white rock. Each day, another 2,000 pounds of new rock, about the weight of a large bison, is added to these terraces. They're growing at a rate of about 8 inches a year. That's twice as fast as your fingernails. In places, these terraces are more than 250 feet thick. Wherever there's warm water, it's colonized by brightly colored bacteria and mats of algae. But if the spring dries up, the microorganisms die, leaving only a stark, desolate moonscape. In some parts of Yellowstone, the water is so acidic, it will dissolve the pants off people who sit on damp ground. Up until 1965, it was assumed nothing could survive in a geothermal acid bath bubbling at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, 2 scientists visiting Yellowstone scooped up some yellow-brown scum growing on the edge of a pool and discovered it was full of living microbes, the very first extremophiles, life forms that thrive in geochemically extreme conditions. You can tell the temperature of a pool by the color of algae living in it. If the water is 120 degrees, the algae will be green. 145, orange. 180 degrees, and the algae will be a rosy pink. The water in your bath is only about 100 degrees, so swimming in these pools can be deadly. Other pools are so hot, not even the most extreme extremophiles can survive. Water erupting from Yellowstone geysers is superheated to an average of 204 degrees Fahrenheit. The first prehistoric people in the area made good use of the hot water. Ancient artifacts indicate that they came to bathe and cook food. Legend has it, birds in Yellowstone drink so much hot water that they lay hard-boiled eggs. But fish face even greater dangers. In this land of boiling water, it was said that anglers could lift cooked fish straight out of the water and onto the plate. This is one fisherman's tale that turned out to be true.
This month on 3Net, see the world in 3D as only IMAX can show you. Galapagos brings you closer than ever before to the place where land's oldest reptiles meet the mammals of the marine in one of the last pristine places on Earth. L5 launches you into the future, to a city in outer space where humans will live in and travel throughout our very own solar system. NASCAR puts you in the driver's seat for the heart-pounding 3D thrills of America's most popular spectator sport. And T-Rex takes you back 65 million years for a prehistoric adventure that brings you face to face with the fiercest of the dinosaurs. This month, only on 3Net.
Covering an area almost twice the size of Washington, D.C., Yellowstone Lake is the largest high-altitude lake in North America. On the surface, it looks like an oasis of calm in a fiery land. But even at the depths of winter, when the lake is covered by 3 feet of ice, parts of the lake bottom still boil. Hot springs are found both beside and below the lake. One underwater geyser erupts every 25 minutes, and trout regularly circle the area, feeding on the clouds of bugs stirred up by the eruption, which is why the geyser's called the trout jacuzzi. The earliest explorers of Yellowstone returned with tall tales of a lake where you could catch a trout, swing the pole around, dip it into a boiling pool, and cook the fish without taking it off the line. And remarkably, it's true. For many years, this trick was a highlight for any visiting angler. For a while, the best-dressed fisherman in Yellowstone wore a chef's hat and an apron. But after one too many incidents where the fish and the angler went into the boiling water, the practice was sadly outlawed. But there are plenty of other places to fish, as the park contains more than 2,500 miles of rivers. The most impressive is the Yellowstone River, where it runs through an area called the Grand Canyon. About 18,000 years ago, the Grand Canyon was born when the mouth of the Yellowstone Lake was blocked by enormous frozen dams. When the ice melted, catastrophic flash floods gouged the canyon out of solid rock. But flooding is not the only danger in the waters of Yellowstone. The Firehole River starts out as a normal mountain stream, with a typical mid-July water temperature of about 50 degrees. After the water has traveled 12 miles and wound its way through 3 geyser basins, the water temperature is more than doubled to 110 degrees. Early explorers thought Yellowstone offered a perfect vision of hell. But this land of fire and brimstone is actually a source of new life. The water of Yellowstone carries vital minerals that travel all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, feeding everything along the way. The nation's breadbasket is also built on the back of land fertilized by Yellowstone, in some of the largest volcanic eruptions the Earth has ever known. In this harsh and unforgiving land, from out of the ashes springs new life. Even the trees must die to be born again.
On 3Net. Journey to the farthest reaches of our world and beyond for a 3D experience like no other. From the endless mysteries of space to the teeming life and stunning diversity of our oceans, travel to the final frontiers of human exploration and witness the marvels of our world in a way you've never seen before. Prepare to be transported to the exotic, the unique, the distant, and the amazing. Explore the wonders of our universe that exist far above the Earth. and far below its surface. Above and below, Mondays starting at 8, only on 3Net.
%80 of Yellowstone National Park is covered in subalpine forest. Wildfire is a natural part of the Yellowstone ecosystem. The trees have to burn to be born again. Each year, about 24 forest fires are started by summer thunderstorms, bringing lightning but no rain. A lightning strike hits a lodgepole pine in a shower of sparks, blowing pieces of bark 100 feet in all directions. If the forest is dry enough, it starts to burn. There was a time when forest fires in the park were considered a purely destructive force. All fires were quickly suppressed. But this led to an increase in dead and dying forests, which provided more fuel for later fires, making them much harder and, in some cases, impossible to control. During the drought of 1988, on a single day in August, 150,000 acres, an area the size of Chicago, was turned to ash. Today, fire is considered an integral part of the forests of Yellowstone. Lodgepole pines, the most common trees in the park, have cones that are only opened by the heat of a fire. The pine seedlings grow twice as fast in burned areas, thanks to more sunlight reaching the forest floor and nutrients in the ash. The trees of Yellowstone have regrown from the ashes again and again. But there have been times when not just the forest, but the whole of Yellowstone has been completely obliterated. That's what happens when you live on top of a supervolcano. Mondays on 3Net. Journey to the farthest reaches of our world and beyond for a 3D experience like no other. From the endless mysteries of space
to the teeming life and stunning diversity of our oceans. Travel to the final frontiers of human exploration and witness the marvels of our world in a way you've never seen before. Prepare to be transported to the exotic, the unique, the distant, and the amazing. Explore the wonders of our universe that exist far above the Earth and far below its surface. Above and Below, Mondays starting at 8, only on 3Net.
When most people think of volcanoes, they imagine something with a classic cone shape of Kilauea or Kilimanjaro. But there's another kind of volcano that's so explosive, it leaves behind not a cone, but a vast hole in the ground. It's called a caldera, from the Latin word for cauldron. Few visitors to Yellowstone National Park realize they're standing on top of the world's biggest caldera, 40 miles wide. In most places on Earth, magma is 40 miles down. But in Yellowstone, a churning sea of molten rock is just 2 miles under the surface and restlessly pressing upwards. Scientists call the Yellowstone caldera the deadliest volcano on Earth. It first erupted 16.5 million years ago, and it's blown 100 times since. The last big eruption, more than 500,000 years ago, was 1,000 times bigger than Mount St. Helens. 2 million years before, the explosion was 8,000 times bigger. It left a hole the size of Rhode Island and created a global catastrophe and mass extinction. The Yellowstone caldera produced a cloud of toxic ash so enormous that if swept into California, it would bury the entire state under 18 feet of ash. "800 miles away in Nebraska, scientists uncovered a 12-million-year-old water hole surrounded by the fossils of bizarre creatures long extinct, all smothered under 2 feet of ash from a Yellowstone eruption. In Idaho, they grow great potatoes in the ashes left behind by Yellowstone's eruptions. Yellowstone National Park sits on top of a supervolcano. Throughout its life, the Yellowstone supervolcano has averaged an eruption every 600,000 years. The last eruption was 630,000 years ago. Yellowstone is overdue. Experts are confident that there's nothing to suggest the supervolcano will blow next week or even next year. But one day, Yellowstone will explode, and the world will surely notice, just as it did in 1872, when Ferdinand Hayden started a movement in land conservation that spanned the entire globe. Yellowstone National Park is a tribute to the foresight of those who created it, and a unique part of America's heritage. Only in Yellowstone are forests that have never been logged, rivers never dammed, minerals never mined, and grasslands never farmed. The magnificent wilderness only survived thanks to the dedication of the park's many protectors. But this is land that belongs to every American, and every American has an obligation to preserve Yellowstone National Park for future generations. With the arrival of winter, the gates to the national park are closed, as the roads will no longer be plowed for visitors until spring. Yellowstone is left in peace, as the winter snows form a protective shroud across America's very first national park.
Mondays on 3Net. Journey to the farthest reaches of our world and beyond for a 3D experience like no other. From the endless mysteries of space to the teeming life and stunning diversity of our oceans, travel to the final frontiers of human exploration and witness the marvels of our world in a way you've never seen before. Prepare to be transported to the exotic, the unique, the distant, and the amazing. Explore the wonders of our universe that exist far above the Earth and far below its surface. above and below. Mondays starting at 8, only on 3net.